Welcome to the Your Leadership Legacy podcast. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I'm so excited to bring you this next podcast dedicated to you high performers out there who want to reinvent yourself, reinvent your business, maybe your career, all of it. This podcast is all about being dedicated to transformation and being the best possible leader of yourself and others that you can be in order to create a legacy that lives on. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause. I am the founder and CEO of True You Teams. And here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and we are on our very last day of this summit, and we have saved the best for last. We have Kiva Schuler with us today. Welcome, Kiva.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So if you could just give the listeners a little bit of background about you, that would be awesome.
Yeah, well, I like to say I've been playing in the world of entrepreneurship for the last, 12 years now. I, like many entrepreneurs, started in corporate. I worked in the investment management industry and, made way too much money, way too early back in the 90s. and what I can see now is that sort of set me up for, the arrogant belief that I could just hang up a shingle and start a business and the heavens would part and the red carpet would be laid out. I think I like to tell people now that my first business plan had me making 8 figures in 2 years.
There you go.
It was like 60 pages long, and that didn't happen.
Right.
But what I found over the last dozen years is that for me, entrepreneurship has been the single most powerful impetus for my own personal growth, for stepping into leadership, for conquering my demons, for getting humble. And I mean like getting really, really humble. And has ultimately led me to live what I consider to be an extraordinary life. It's really like, pinch me now. We have these moments where it's like, I made it, I did it. So it's pretty cool.
That's so exciting. So I love where you're going with the ego part, right? Because that's big. It's huge.
It's huge.
Had my own ego to overcome and all that good stuff. So you're in corporate. What led you to go, I want to start my own business?
So I was in sales. I was a mutual fund wholesaler. I was traveling, around 4 states, selling in, Merrill Lynch offices and Payne Weber. I was like, the girl wholesaler, which was very rare at the time. And to play that role, I grew up in New York. My mother is an incredibly successful newspaper journalist, was a single mom. Like I say, I was raised with a front row seat to feminism.
That's amazing.
And I watched her sacrifice so much in her career, have to fight every day, have to literally battle to maintain her albeit high position. It was such a struggle for her. And so when I had my own children, I just had this moment where I thought, I'm not gonna walk the path she walked. I saw how that played out. And at the time I thought, well, I'll just be done. I thought, I'll be a mom now. And that lasted about 6 months. In that 6 months, I taught myself to crochet. I became an aerobics instructor. I started a nonprofit to teach. I am like a create person.
Sure.
And so one day they were sitting playing, I think it was like right when Barack Obama was starting to run for the office the first time. And he gave a speech and he said that it was the responsibility of every man and woman to divest of their intellectual capacity to make the world a better place. Mm. And I thought to myself, like, I have a master's degree. I am a financial executive and I'm sitting here crocheting, teaching aerobics and watching my kids who are fine. And it was a very huge wake-up call for me. And so I thought, well, I have all this information on business and money. I'll start a business. And my first business was called WISE. That stood for Women I can't even remember. It's been so long, but it was about teaching women financial literacy. Sure. And it was never actually a business. I think it, cost 6 figures and made 2,000 kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was the beginning. It was the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. It always takes this wake up call, right? So as you talk to your mom today,
yeah,
she looks back over her career, what are her thoughts looking back over that?
I mean, my mother is still a 70-year-old New York hustle. She's the theater critic now for a pretty big newspaper. She got demoted a few years ago. They decided that a 70-year-old woman should not be the editor of a newspaper. And I mean, I think my mother's identity is so entangled in her career, and it's who she is. It's actually poignant and heartbreaking in its beauty. And women of that generation, I just bow to them, because what they had to go through to give us the opportunity of choice and to give us the ability to say yes or no or this much, we just will never be able to repay that.
Right. They really paid.
Yeah, so when I think my mom, when my mom looks at what I've done, of course she's my mom. She's so proud. And, I think that she envies our choice that, technology has made coming into business possible for women in a way that it never could have before in history. I say I've built a life out of air. I sell ideas, and that's extraordinary. And then she likes to gloat because she's like, I always knew you'd be a writer, which is, that's great what I do.
That's funny. So the name of this series is called Your Leadership Legacy, and it's all about leaving a leadership legacy. And if I think of your mom, like, wow, look at the legacy that she's left, right? And especially instilled in you all of this wisdom. So what does it mean to you, Kiva, to leave a leadership legacy?
So I've really come to see leadership. I just because of my own spiritual path and my own, bumpy ride. This is a bumpy ride. This journey of forging your own way without structure, right? Without support, without health insurance, without a paycheck. It's an interesting path. And my leadership stance is just come to a place of complete and total humility and surrender. I think that the best way for me to lead is to live my values and to give my team and my clients too, because I lead them as well, the capacity to fall forward, to fail, to make mistakes, to learn for themselves, to have their back, to be, I always say, if I ran a restaurant, I'd be cooking right alongside everyone else. Right. And so to me, where I've really come to land in leadership is it's walk your talk and talk your walk, and be willing to almost ascend the people that you're aspiring to lead to a position above you, so that you are in service to them versus them needing to be accountable to you. And that works for, certainly this kind of business, a virtual business where, I've got tons of millennials working for me, literally scattered around the globe. They require freedom. Mm-hmm. And the more freedom I give them, and the more trust that I give them, and the more ownership that I give them, the more that they just blow me away with what they create and how they show up.
Yeah. What do you think holds people back from that way of being as a leader?
Fear of losing control, primarily, is pretty much the main one. Sure. I think that most of us have been conditioned to not let people see us fail, to worry a lot about what other people think, and that, somehow if we make a mistake or if something goes wrong, that it will have people think less of us. My experience has been the opposite. The more that we show people the totality of who we are, warts and all, the more it gives them permission to show all of themselves and put themselves out there. Especially in entrepreneurship, and I would imagine in any leadership role, we learn way more from our failures than from things that went well. And so we have to stop being afraid of that. And I can't protect my team from that either. People that work for me or the clients we serve, like, they've got to go get bumped around. That's how we learn.
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about leadership and how leadership has evolved over time, and maybe the leader that you were 5 years ago versus the leader that you are today and the leader that we know we need for tomorrow, what's the difference? How has that evolved?
I mean, I don't think that I stepped into my leader. I think I had a complete fear of leadership 5 years ago, to tell you the truth. I didn't have a lot of trust in myself. So to give that to other people would have been near to impossible. And so what's true about me is I probably avoided leadership for most of my career, right? I was a salesperson. You know, as a salesperson, you're not leading, you're like a lone ranger out, like knocking down doors. That part I had no problem with.
Yeah.
But having other people rely on me and me rely on other people, that did not feel safe until very recently. And it took a lot of work, quite honestly, a lot of inner work and personal growth work and coaching and therapy and all the things to learn to trust people and to be trustworthy.
Yeah, I like where you go with that, because you mentioned, I wrote it down, permission to be yourself. Like when you are your whole self in totality, you give other people permission. And I feel like you really create that safe space. And that's kind of going back to what you're saying. It's that giving people a safe place to practice, right? Because we are human and we do fail and we do have to evolve, but maybe we're not really sure of how to evolve. So I really, really like where you're going with that, with permission. So what do you think is the hardest part for a new leader in today's time?
I think that we live in a time where more people want sovereignty. I love Daniel Pink's book, Drive, where he talks about intrinsic motivation being far more valuable to most people than monetary rewards or accolades. And intrinsic motivation means you have that authentic desire to do things. I think it's hard for, especially for business owners, for us to like release our grip on it has to be done this way. And to let someone emerge in their own leadership is incredibly scary. We're going to have a visitor.
I love that.
Yeah. So, I lost my train of thought because I got distracted by the cute dog.
That's totally fine. So you were talking about like one of the hardest parts about being a leader.
Yeah. So giving people other space to lead. I always say, like, when I'm coaching people on this, you want people working for you that will just get in the boat and row, right? That aren't going to sit back and wait to be told when to row, how to row, which direction to row in, but that are willing to just like pick up something and run with it. And I think that piece of letting go and surrender is actually the hardest piece of leadership. It's not controlling. It's not micromanaging. It's, all the things that we, many of us were sort of managed in that old paradigm that doesn't work, because there's been this, I think, an up-leveling in human consciousness where people are looking for more intrinsic motivation, more sovereignty, more responsibility.
Yeah, totally agree. So when we think about self-leadership, because I think that's kind of where you're going, right? What does self-leadership mean to you?
Taking 100% personal responsibility for everything in your life.
Yeah. So people, why is that so hard for some?
Because it's way easier to blame.
Right.
It's way easier to say, oh, it's the economy. Oh, it's my employee. Oh, it's this pain in the tush client. Oh, my kids. Oh, my spouse. Oh, my thing. And what we do, I had a mentor once, and I remember when he said this to me, I was so mad. He said, Kiva, anytime that you are looking outside of yourself for something to make you happy or to take responsibility, you are playing the victim. And I remember the time I was like, oh, what? Me? Like, I'm the most balls to the wall, like I'm a go-getter. I'm not a victim. But I've really, really come to see that that's true, that we set ourselves up for victimhood unconsciously by putting anything outside of ourselves. And so until you're willing to like really dig deep and say, you know what, I did create that failure. I did create that misunderstanding. I didn't put boundaries in place. I didn't make a strong agreement. We're being a victim. And that does not compute with leadership.
Right. And sometimes, I love what you said, we don't always even realize it. I mean,
most people don't. Most people are operating, I always say it's like you're seeing life through this veil of perceptions, beliefs, past experiences, limitations, fears. So we rarely see things as they are. it's why I'm such a fan of personal growth work and going deep and really getting to the point where you're willing to like expose your heart and, love yourself in your mess, love the failures, I'll tell you all the things that are wrong with me. It's like, it's literally lost all its trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy when you go down that journey. So if I'm a leader,
yeah,
today, whether I own my own business, whether I'm in, business and I have a title, whether I'm aspiring to be a leader, and I'm listening to you and I'm like, okay, so there's probably some things that I own that I need to really think about and figure out what those are. What's the one piece of advice? Like, where do people even start to get going where they need to?
I'll give you a couple of resources. So there's a few books in my probably they're on my shelf that I have everyone read. There are books that I say I wasn't the same person before and after. The first is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And I think that book does such a good job of illuminating how the voices and thoughts in your head aren't actually true. Most people believe what they think. They think, oh, I think it's true. And that book, it does the best job of starting to allow you to be a bit more discerning of like, wait, let me think about that and put a pause between the impulse and the action. So I love that book. The other book is, oh my gosh, I'm having a mind blank, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. Another one where it was just like, whoa, that is radical responsibility. That book's framework for having clear communication, for expressing your true needs, for doing it without fluff and without manipulation, I think is the best that there is. So those are two books. And then, if you're willing to go deeper, find a great coach, find someone who's going to poke holes in your thesis of what life is and isn't, because that's where the magic lives.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the radical responsibility. If we really think about that radical responsibility, like how do I take radical responsibility for my life?
Without diminishing confidence, right? Like there's a way that we can take full responsibility for our actions, for our past, for mistakes, and still completely have confidence. And that's the magical place, right? Where it's vulnerability and power together.
Right. So I understand that you have a free gift that you're going to offer the listeners.
Yeah.
Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our company, Boldheart, is really a company whose intention is to help, passionate, heart-centered business owners who are committed to leading with integrity, authenticity, and love, build a business that has a solid foundation, where there isn't the old paradigm of needing to compromise financial results because you want to do things the right way. Mm-hmm. And so we have a guide. It's called Make Twice as Much in Half the Time. And what it's about is really growing into becoming a leader by implementing these activators that allow you to show up more powerfully, but almost take your foot off the effort gas a little bit so that you can experience greater results with less effort.
Great. So what common theme, as you were explaining that, here's a question that came to me. I know that you work with thousands of people. What common thread do you see as people are going through this journey? Like, what's the commonality there?
I would say that most people are leaning into their career, whether it's in corporate or entrepreneurship, from a place of wounding. That they have made the choices that they've made for approval, for validation, to feel worthy, because they don't have that intrinsically in themselves. And so we make these kind of convoluted decisions. And until that clears out, those things tend to have dysfunctional or self-sabotaging impact on the thing that we think we want. And so, I've gotten really good at sort of spotting the like, oh, you want your mom to be proud of you, so you think you need the $5 million business, when we really unpack all of that, you probably don't, So things like that. I just think that there's a pervasive influence of our trauma and our dysfunction that unless we're conscious to it, really does have an impact on our career choices.
Yeah. And that's kind of where that like wake up call comes. I heard you say it. I know I've said it, I had a wake up call. It's this wake up call that says, wait, the stories that you're telling yourself aren't that reality. Kind of like,
yeah, like, oh my God, everything that I've been living up until this point is not true. What?
Yeah.
And then you have to figure out for yourself what is. But that's the incredible opportunity, because when you do that, then you can make very intentional decisions about how you're allocating yourself in time and space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just like this whole transformation of how we think. And we don't have to do it alone. I think that was my biggest thing, right? Like I felt like I was the only one feeling this stuff. And when you really start unpacking it and talking to people, this is a process that if you're wanting to go through it, like it's kind of a similar process. It's just unprogramming all this programming that we get over time.
It is required. I always say, being freedom, which is ultimately the point, right? We're all trying to find personal freedom. Mm-hmm. It's amazing, to get to a point in your life where you're really truly living in your purpose, doing work you love, living abundantly, all of that. But it's not free.
No.
There are hurdles to be jumped. There's work to be done. There's responsibility to be taken. There are failures. There are successes. It's a bumpy road, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Right. I'm only 90 days in and I wouldn't either. So
well, 12 later, I can tell you worth every,
Right.
And I've had all of them, I promise you.
Yeah. It's crazy how when you're living your purpose and doing what God sent you to do, how the lines between work and play, they just like, it's all kind of the same.
It doesn't even, I can't fathom going, it's like, I can't remember what that was like. It's like, why would I don't retirement, what? Like I'm retired now. It kind of feels like, and it's just a very different way of living where life and work and play and travel all just start to become one thing. And it's really quite a privilege to get to live that way. I do truly, I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. And so the clarification is, it's not about whether you're in business with a title, working for corporate America or working for yourself. It's about finding your purpose and your passion and living that.
Yeah. And playing full out.
Playing full out. Yeah. Our time is already over.
I feel so fast.
I know. I feel like I could talk to you all day long. This is amazing. So thank you so much for saying yes and for coming on. I think you are a rock star and I love what you're doing in the world. It's pretty amazing.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. All right, you guys, that is our very last episode in this whole series of Your Leadership Legacy. Thank you so much for being part of it. Thank you for just being here. So with that, I will say goodbye. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Check out our programs and events at trueyouteams.com. And until next time, make it an amazing day.